Why are so many immigrants coming into America? In my last video, I talked about Haitian migration, specifically into Mexico. Yeah, real interesting. But why are there so many in the US? And why are they here right now? Well, I'm going to attempt to give the most complete and factual answer possible. It's hard to get real answers about anything related to immigration, because the whole subject matter has been subsumed into the cesspool that we call politics. You see, politics forces everybody to have an opinion on a topic, even if that opinion is not well researched or informed. Politics also forces everybody into a binary. You're either left or right, smart or dumb, good or bad. On an issue as controversial as immigration, everybody, being the team sport creatures that we are, is de facto forced into a bucket. Worst of all, the most available information from both perspectives is given by political actors who speak in sound bites and have an agenda, hence arming two otherwise ignorant sides with plastic swords of 15% knowledge. They then fiercely duel with their figurative plastic swords on Facebook, not even realizing that neither they nor their opponent have any idea what they're talking about. Okay, damn it, I'm getting off track. Current immigrants. What's going on? Why are they here? Well, there are really four reasons: political instability, economic opportunity, rhetoric, and U.S. policy. Reason number one, political instability. Haitians are the easiest example. Why would somebody want to leave Haiti? Because Haiti sucks. No further explanation needed. Why would somebody want to leave Cuba? Communism. Yes, I know your college professor told you that Cuba has the best healthcare in the world. Surprise, surprise, they were full of shit. Maybe I should do a video on that in the future. Venezuela? Well, now this one is interesting. Yes, Nicolas Maduro is a socialist dictator that has contributed to the collapse of what should be a great country. But, on the other hand, Venezuela is not nearly as hard to leave as Cuba or Haiti. For one, they aren't an island. They have Colombia and Brazil, two great countries, right there that they can walk to. Also, the general population of Venezuela, by global standards, is not nearly as poor as the average Cuban, or definitely the average Haitian. Venezuelans have also been fleeing Chavez and Maduro for over 30 years, so why are they leaving now? Well, in this group, I think we slowly transition from straight-up political persecution to reason number two, economic opportunity. Believe it or not, despite our faults, the United States is still the greatest place in the world to make money. As Americans, we kind of take it for granted that pretty much anybody can move up the socioeconomic ladder if they work hard. It's just simply not that easy in most countries. Mexicans are a good example. Now, most of the immigrants coming over today are not Mexican, but we did have an enormous Mexican wave in the U.S. in the 90s and 2000s. And I think a lot of well-meaning people assume that these Mexicans were just fleeing cartel violence, but that really isn't the case most of the time. The vast majority just came to make more money. They were normally living in poor southern states like Guerrero, Michoacán, Chiapas, etc., where economic mobility is very difficult. Many Mexicans came to the U.S. before their village in Mexico was even dangerous. Michoacán and Guerrero, two of the most dangerous states in Mexico, on paper, didn't even get bad until like 2006. And a lot of these Mexican immigrants have since naturalized or gotten their green cards, and they frequently and happily go back to visit their hometowns, even if their hometowns have since become dangerous. So persecution doesn't really explain it. You know, many Americans who spend a lot of time in Mexico, like myself, realize that it's an amazing country, and we wonder, why would anybody want to leave? Well, money. That's the reason. Mexico is an amazing place if you have money. Honestly, I'd probably throw most of Central and South Americans into this category of economic opportunity. Guatemala, Honduras, Colombia, Ecuador, they most likely just need money, and they're not being actively persecuted by anyone. Okay, reasons number one and two might explain why immigrants are leaving, but why are they coming, and why are they coming now? Reason number three, rhetoric. You know how I said that Americans are typically uninformed on politics and we think in binaries? It's not just Americans, it's everybody. When Trump said he's building a wall and deporting everybody in 2016, that was a deterrent for immigrants. It didn't matter that he didn't do either of those things. It didn't even matter that it was obvious at the time that he wasn't going to do either of those things. They just took him at his word. And the president is the stand-in representative of the whole country. On the other hand, the entire left, especially Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, poured fuel on the fire, calling Trump and his supporters fringe, evil, frothing-at-the-mouth racist who wanted a white ethno-state. They said stuff like this for 4 years.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire.
And they, conversely, were the welcoming melting pot proponents who would let everybody in, give them citizenship, stop deportations. It didn't matter that the Democrats have done nothing for immigrants in my entire lifetime. It didn't matter that Obama deported more people per year than Trump. It didn't matter that the Democrats refused multiple reasonable offers by Trump, Trump, the supposed racist, to expand the DACA program by 100% and provide all of its recipients a pathway to permanent residency, which is something they currently do not have. All that mattered was rhetoric. Words absolutely matter. And if you don't believe me, go talk to the 25-year-old who's retired on a beach because Elon Musk tweeted something about a shitcoin with a dog on it. So there are these huge migrant caravans that started under the Trump administration. And these migrant caravans drastically increased in size pretty much as soon as Biden got in office. It was the perfect storm. Many of these immigrants are from poor countries at best, and dangerous prison states or failed states at worst. The whole world had just been ravaged by a pandemic. Or, maybe more accurately put, the human race had been ravaged by the world government's responses to a pandemic. And at the same time things are finally lightening up, the most economically opportune and free country got rid of their Klansman president and voted for the hippie regime. So YouTuber Tommy G, highly recommended channel by the way, actually spent some time with human smugglers or coyotes at the border. And in these interviews, the coyotes say how Biden was a huge boom for business because enthusiasm was up for illegal entry.
Have you noticed the immigration in the last 2 or 3 years has picked up dramatically?
And Biden realized this immediately. You see, as is tradition in American politics, candidates say whatever they want to get elected. The general progression is the most extreme rhetoric in the primaries, so you can capture your base. Then, after you've acquired your base, you lighten up a little bit in the general election, so you can go after the undecided voters. Once you win the general election, you are officially part of the establishment and can pretty much be the same as the last guy. Look at Trump, for example. 2015 Republican primary. Build that wall.
We're going to build a wall. It's going to be built.
Deport every single illegal immigrant. They're rapists and murderers.
They're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
Ban all Muslims from the U.S.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
2016 general election, we're only deporting criminal illegal immigrants. I have love for DACA recipients. I'd love for them to be legalized.
Isn't treating journalists with heart?
Well, I have a great heart for the folks we're talking about, a great love for them. And people think in terms of children, but they're really young adults. I have a love for these people, and hopefully now Congress will be able to help them and do it properly.
I didn't say Muslim ban. I just want a ban from certain countries that harbor terrorists.
Well, first of all, I never said the term Muslim. You did. You told me Muslims. I didn't say that. I'm saying you're going to profile people that maybe look suspicious.
He wins the 2016 election. His actual presidency, no wall, less deportations than Obama. But there were some fairly significant differences between some Trump immigration policy from his predecessor, Obama, and his successor, Joe Biden. Which brings us to number 4. Change in U.S. policy, and this one is a doozy. So pretty much as soon as Biden got into office, his administration started backpedaling on the rhetoric. And come on, let's be honest, the dude was already cognitively falling apart way before he got elected. So what'd he do? He sent his VP, Kamala Harris, to address the biggest problem created by his campaign. This was actually the genesis of her infamous nickname, the Border Czar. Like all lying politicians, Kamala started by 100% reversing her administration's tone, telling immigrants not to come and not to expect anything once they got here.
I want to be clear to folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come. Do not come.
But it was way too late for that. To say the ship had already sailed would be a severe understatement. The ship hadn't just sailed, it was already parked in the harbor. See, These cross-country journeys require significant planning and enormous risk. They are bigger gambles than 99.9% of Americans will ever take in their entire life. You have to walk for hundreds of miles through foreign countries with no resources and hardly any money. Remember, most of these people would be lucky to make $100 to $200 USD a month. But a good coyote, to get them over the border wall in Mexico, man, that could cost between $5,000 and $12,000. And then, despite all that, there's still a coin flip's chance that you get caught and the whole thing is for naught. That's insane risk, even for a Guatemalan who only has to cross 2 international borders. The risk multiplies exponentially for, say, a Venezuelan who has to cross 8 international borders, one of those being the Darien Gap in between Colombia and Panama. For those who don't know, the Darien Gap is 100 miles of treacherous rainforest jungle. No roads, no cities, no gas stations. The only human inhabitants are Colombian rebel paramilitary groups that take no issue with extorting, raping, or otherwise, let's say, bothering destitute migrants. Most of these migrant caravans were already well on their way by the time Biden got to office in 2021. And when you're that invested, physically and monetarily, is a stern warning from an 80-year-old with dementia or his VP spokeswoman going to deter you? Hell no. In fact, a good portion of these immigrants had already completed their journey to the US border, but they've been stuck in Mexico. As I covered in my last video, a lot of these were Haitians, but there were people from all over. Honduras, Nicaragua, Venezuela, what have you. And why were the immigrants stuck in Mexico? Well, the aptly named Remain in Mexico policy. Now, Remain in Mexico could be a 20-part series if I really wanted to deep dive it. But in the interest of time, I'm going to try and sum it up real quick, acknowledging that I'm leaving out some pretty big parts. Pretty much, immigration enforcement has always been a weighted concept matrix. No politician will ever say this, but it is impossible to enforce everything. You can't catch everybody, you can't deport everybody, you can't process everybody. You have to analyze risk and reward. But the government has the added handicap of sucking and being inefficient at absolutely everything. Think about the horrible service you get at the DMV. It's not just the DMV. This is every government agency, including DHS, USCIS, ICE, what have you. They create this spider web of bureaucracy and rules that make everything definitionally inefficient. So when an immigrant is detained at the border, they can't just toss him back over the fence and wash their hands. The immigrant must be detained. Then they must be given a court date. Then the immigration court decides their fate. If they're given a deportation proceeding, then they have to go. But if they don't, then they just end up on the ICE list, and then ICE has to catch them and deport them. There's a major problem. That all takes a really freaking long time. And there's not enough space in a migrant detention facility to hold everybody forever, nor are they even allowed to. Hey guys, sorry for the disclaimer. I got sick before I recorded the second part of this video, so my voice sounds a little weird. Hope it doesn't ruin your viewing experience, all 10 of you. In Zedvitas v. Davis in 2001, I think I'm saying that right, the Supreme Court forbid the indefinite detention of migrants. So like actuaries working for insurance companies, the government had these blanket characteristics to decide who to care about and who to keep in detention. So hypothetically, let's say that we detain 1,000 immigrants trying to cross the border, but we can only hold on to 600 of them. Well, we probably should detain the murderers and the rapists. We probably shouldn't worry too much about the kids. If we're letting the kids in, we should probably let the parents in too. And you know what? If this is your second time, if you've already been caught before, we're probably not going to go easy on you, and we're going to detain you this time. You get what I mean? These are just examples, just hypotheticals. But what happens to the remaining 400 people? They are released into the interior of the United States. Now, policies pertaining to this risk and reward analysis are colloquially, often pejoratively, known as catch and release. Catch and release isn't a policy per se. It's more of a spectrum, referring to how many and what type of immigrants get detained. Well, one of these protected groups for a long time were asylum seekers. And I'm sure you guys see the problem with that. Anybody can claim asylum. And immigrants started to catch on to this. So if you're planning on crossing illegally anyways, why not apply for asylum? You get to easily bypass one of the hardest parts of the journey, getting over that border. Now, to be fair, there is a downside to claiming asylum. If the asylum petition is found erroneous, then you get jumped towards the top of that deportation line. Just like the government has to do a risk-reward analysis on the detainees at the border, they have to do the same thing for deportations. And one of the things that could make you a higher priority is being an erroneous asylum claimant. But anyways, the upside was too good for a lot of migrants. So that's exactly what happened. many immigrants started to claim asylum. And President Trump's administration realized this loophole. Their solution? Remain in Mexico. In 2018, the DHS announced the, ironically named, Migrants Protection Protocols. This allowed the DHS to make asylum applicants await their court date in Mexico, as opposed to the United States. Now, it's an objective fact that Donald Trump didn't follow through on his biggest campaign promises regarding immigration. That's why I think it's funny that a lot of his supporters see him as a demigod, while his haters see him as a literal demon from hell. There's no border wall, the portions that are there were not paid by Mexico, and the deportations remain largely unchanged from the Obama administration. But, that said, Trump did do a lot of boxing on these administrative issues of asylum and migrant detention. So it seems perfectly logical. Why would we admit people to the country before they even have permission to be here? Does Disney let you in before making sure that you have a ticket? Or Costco, do they just let you in and then wait until you're halfway done with your shopping trip before they check your membership card? No. Okay, now you guys understand Remain in Mexico. That wasn't even that long. Where were we? Oh, yeah, we're back in 2021. There are thousands and thousands of immigrants waiting just over the wall in Mexico. Entire areas of these Mexican border cities are starting to look like Skid Row. There are thousands more starting their trek through Central America. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are now in the White House, and everybody outside the U.S. is stoked. The wicked wizard of the West, Donald Trump, has fallen. His replacement has just spent his entire campaign promising the world to immigrants. The immigrants awaiting their asylum cases in Mexico are elated. They'll finally get out of their tent cities and into the land of the free. The migrants on their way in the caravans are elated. By the time they arrive, Biden probably would have worked out the kinks, and hopefully they can just waltz right in. Mexico can't wait. Hopefully, we can finally get these migrants out of our country and just pass them along, just like Guatemala did to us. The coyotes are excited. There are still plenty of immigrants who aren't going to apply for asylum, and they're just going to cross the classic way. Human smugglers are really liking their bets right now. So the spotlight is on the new administration. What are they going to do? Well, in February 2021, 1 month into Biden's administration, boom, Remain in Mexico is suspended. The floodgates start to open. Over 25,000 immigrants previously in Mexico were now being released into the U.S. interior. This news, as you can imagine, really emboldened the migrants who are already in a caravan on the way to the U.S., but it also emboldened prospective migrants who are maybe still in their home countries and kind of on the fence of whether or not to leave. Now, in August of 2021, that is, a federal judge in Texas blocked the Biden administration's policy to suspend Remain in Mexico, which meant that it had to go through the rigmarole of the courts. Now, these battles in the courts, I mean, these things can just take forever. And this one really did. This tug-of-war in the courts lasted through most of 2022. And while this probably slowed the pace of asylum admissions, it did nothing to stop the migrants from coming. Because, back to point 3, rhetoric. There's still optimism among migrant caravans that they will get in. Also, it's not like literally everybody's claiming asylum. There are still thousands of the classic illegal immigrant who's just going to hire a coyote and try and sneak over outside of a port of entry. And it's not like the number of Border Patrol agents is proportionally increasing to the amount of migrants that are coming in. Now we're in 2023, January, and the border is a total shit show. There are now millions of immigrants from all over the world, either already in the U.S. interior, at a U.S. detention camp on the border, on a Mexican detention camp on the other side of the border, or in a caravan on the way up to the Mexico-U.S. border. And I haven't even mentioned yet that at this time, the normal processing for legal immigrants was also way behind, because during COVID, they shut down all the U.S. consulates that were doing green card interviews. So at the same time, an easy legal immigrant, whose case might have only taken 3 months in 2019, was now taking close to 2 years. Biden is in bad shape. The number of immigrants coming in has gotten to completely unmanageable levels. He has to find a way to either process people faster or stop the immigrants from coming altogether. But there's one major problem with stopping the immigrants. What would that require? Well, probably a wall, probably sending military to the border, probably deporting a bunch of people who he had already let in, doing all that stuff that Donald Trump said he was going to do, that Biden and his like spent 4 years calling him a racist over. And this is only Biden's first term. He still has to get elected again. So, no, just Can't do it. How in the world? How am I going to get elected if I do the exact same thing that Trump wanted to do? No, can't do it. Can't secure the border anymore. We just have to work on processing people faster. So in January of 2023, Biden announced humanitarian parole for immigrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Without going down a rabbit hole of detail, this pretty much meant that immigrants from these countries get a free pass. They come to the border, they get let in with a few questions asked, and then they're eligible for federally subsidized housing, food stamps, transportation, relocation costs, what have you. And why these countries? Well, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, they're all socialist countries, which means the U.S. establishment doesn't like them, at least on paper. So those are easy enough. I think we were just looking for low-hanging fruit here. So 3 socialist countries, that's why. And Haiti, man, I'm sorry, but Haiti's just Haiti. If we're being objective here, the Haitians, by far and away, have it the worst of all these immigrants. So they made the list. Biden also rolled out the CBP app in the same month. A lot of people will say, well, the app existed before. Okay, but it wasn't really in widespread use until Biden rolled it out. In the CBP app, this allowed people to apply for asylum from their smartphones, not even at the border. Yes, this did cut down on the number of literal people standing at the border applying for asylum, but this is absolutely nothing to stop the flow of immigrants. In fact, many more people were again emboldened and started applying for asylum on their way from their smartphones. You guys see the timing that I said those two things happened in January 2023? Well, that probably jives with your actual life experience. Because chances are, unless you live in a border state, you probably didn't notice all the new immigrants in your day-to-day throughout 2021 or 2022. In 2023, though, that's when we start to see the non-border cities get flooded. Chicago, New York, Aurora, Springfield, San Francisco, you name it. Now we're in 2024, and the situation hasn't gotten any better at all. Biden has actually done a few things to try and shore up the border a little more, but I don't really feel like getting in the details. I thought this was only going to be a 10-minute video, and now we're clocking in at close to 20. But hey, now you guys know why the immigrants are here. You learned something today. I also want to say, I spent a lot of time dumping on the Biden administration and Kamala Harris during this video, and it's totally deserved, so I don't regret that at all. But Trump and the Republicans also have a lot of responsibility for the immigration problems, but I'm just not getting into it today. I'll leave my criticisms of the Republicans for a different time. Peace.